Hey, it's Drybear. A new month is upon us. We are now in April 2022. And what I'd like to do is do a monthly check-in on the popularity of each class in the Western version of Lost Ark. If you missed last month's video, you'll find that linked on screen and down below in the description, just to see how the popularity was last month. And this time around, I'd like to include all 5 of the Western regions: EU Central, EU West, NA East, NA West, and South America. I'll place them all side by side so you can see how the regions differ and see how the classes stack up against each other. But first, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Who knows? I might even be streaming right now. Let's get started. A few disclaimers before we go. I want to mention that even though the problem has been dwindled a little bit, there is still a bot problem that exists in Lost Ark West and in all regions, and honestly in all MMOs in general. The bots tend to specifically choose Berserker and Sorceress, so you're going to see an inflation of Berserker and Sorceress in the popularity, and until the bot problem becomes much less pronounced, you're going to see that in these videos. But it might be cool to see how the numbers change as they put out more and more bot preventative measures. Now, I pulled all the numbers by hand from the client from each server in the region. I grabbed one server in each region, so it's not going to be representative of everything accurately, but it's going to be kind of a snapshot of that region. For EU Central, I pulled from Trixian. From EU West, I pulled from Tortoik. NA East, I pulled from Una. NA West, I pulled from Mari, and South America, I pulled from Kazaros. Now, right off the bat, you'll see that Berserker and Sorceress are pretty saturated. And that's just mainly because I think it's twofold. One, I think they actually are some of the most popular, if not the most popular classes. Even in content that doesn't have bots, when you're grouping with people, you're going to see a large number of Berserkers and a large number of Sorceresses, just because they fit that archetype well, and I think a lot of people really enjoy playing them. Doesn't necessarily mean they're this inflated, but they are popular. So that kicks us off for a very even kilter start. All regions have Berserker at the highest because of bots, and Sorceress as the second because of bots. Now, surprisingly, EU West and South America have the relatively lower amounts of those two classes relative to the other regions. NA East and NA West are the most pronounced, and that's probably because it probably has the most bots in it. And EU West and South America maybe just have less bots in them, or maybe the bots are spreading themselves out a little more. And I think it's fair to say across all regions that assassins are the next most popular class. You'll see Shadowhunter and Deathblade in EU Central being 3 and 4, and then they swap in EU West. And NA East, they're 3 and 5. NA West, they're 4 and 6, and then 3 and 5 again for South America. So the Deathblade and the Shadowhunter, very popular across all regions. And not that surprising. I think rogue assassin type archetypes are always going to be popular. And I actually think that the Shadowhunter and the Deathblade are some of the best made assassin type classes in most RPG games. The Shadowhunter hits that demonic aesthetic. It also has some of the most attractive and gorgeous, stunning looking effects, especially in demon mode, that just look really, really good. The Deathblade plays super fast, very responsive. It has a lot of movement combined with stagger immunity and some CC immunity. So they play really fast, and it just feels good to play. So I think those two are always going to be popular. But interestingly, you're going to see Gunslinger and Striker kind of poke their head in next to them in EU Central, EU West, and then Gunslinger actually beating out Shadowhunter in NA East and NA West. In almost all regions, the counterpart, the male counterpart of the Gunslinger, the Deadeye, is much lower. And I think since Gunslinger was, you'll kind of see this with a lot of classes, when they get a chance to make the gender unlocked version of the class, they keep the core mechanics, but they improve upon them. And a lot of times they can make it more polished, or make it look better, or make it sound better, because they have the experience of having done the class before. And I think Gunslinger fits into that. I think it has some of the exact same weaknesses that Deadeye has, but if you're ever wondering the difference between Gunslinger and Deadeye, Deadeye favors the shotgun and plays more like a melee character in most content, and even in PvP, and Gunslinger is kind of the opposite in that she favors the rifle. Now, you can play the 2-weapon build for Gunslinger and the pistol-only build for Deadeye, though those are a little bit less popular. But in all regions except for EU West, you'll see Deadeye in the bottom 3 or bottom 4. EU West, for whatever reason, just likes Deadeye, and that's awesome. So you're seeing Deadeye and Gunslinger come close together in EU West, which is cool. And I think Deadeye is an awesome class that deserves a lot more playtime and favor, and they're probably one of the first up to get a big buff this year. Paladin is kind of holding the next subsection of stats, like the next grouping of classes. And I think it's hard to tell how popular Paladin and Bard actually are because they're just so needed, right? We don't have artists in the game, so we only have those 2 supports. In most hard content, you're going to want to bring at least a Paladin or a Bard, and then one of each for the 2 parties when you do the 8-man content. So that need for support, I think, brings up their popularity a good bit because there aren't other options. But they also both play really well. What's kind of interesting to me is Paladin is above Bard in popularity in all 5 regions, mainly because maybe it's an aesthetic thing. Maybe people really like the Paladin. I think Paladin is an ancient archetype that has existed in RPG games for a long time. So it's something that people may main Paladin or they main support. And I think Paladin also has a little bit more damage and can be more aggressive, especially in PvP, but also in PvE, though in the later stages of endgame PvE, Bard and Paladin are both mainly support anyway. Bard and Paladin are pretty close together in EU Central, EU West, NA East, and NA West. A little bit lower in South America. It looks like South America favors Paladin quite a bit in the top 4, actually, and Bard being lower than some of the other regions relative to the other classes. But it's good to see the supports up there. If you're playing support, good on you. That's awesome. It's especially in a game where you're always fiending for more potions and consumables. Having an awesome support on your team is the most amazing thing you could ever feel. So if you're playing support, keep doing it. Thank your supports. Oh my God. They save you potions. They save you gold. They save your life. It is awesome. So it's good to have those in the game, and it's good to see those being relatively popular. Striker, which is the gender unlocked counterpart to War Dancers, they shared the same identity and some of the same abilities, is quite popular, very popular in NA West, actually in the top 3. And then EU West and EU Central, very popular as well, and Striker a little bit lower in NA East. And interesting, I'm not sure why the Striker is so disparate. Granted, most of Western gamers are not accustomed to gender locked gameplay, right? It's a very popular thing in Eastern gaming, like Korea specifically, where the developers are located for Lost Ark. But you'll see a lot of games that are gender locked, and that it kind of locks in that class as being more identified and more defined, rather than just being you can make it whatever you want. So Striker being male might just be, people like the idea of Striker and War Dancer, but there might be just, more males playing, or people that want to be a male as a character, and that might push it down. Now, granted, War Dancer is more consistent damage. So you'll see War Dancer with a really high DPS, and it stays that way for basically the whole fight. Lower burst, shorter range, and a little bit less ability mobile, like less dashes, things like that, but has, runs swiftness, which is really good for high movement. So you see them reposition a lot. I think it's just having a little bit less burst, maybe is less flashy for some people, and maybe being able to dash more, have the burst. And then also being a male character might be attracting more people in the Western regions of the game. Now, it's probably a good time to mention that none of these classes are bad. All of these classes are extremely good, even though War Dancer may be lower on these charts. I have a War Dancer. War Dancers are very, very good. And it could also be that War Dancers just don't get strong until tier 3, and people don't want to endure the short-term pain of tier 1 and tier 2 and early tier 3 War Dancer, where you just feel like you're very weak until you start getting all your stats and engravings online to make it feel good. But they have some of the best synergies in the game, Striker and War Dancer, and they are welcome in any party. Awesome classes to play with. So glad to see at least the Striker higher. Soulfist is kind of right in the middle for most regions except for EU West. A little bit higher in NA East, but about the middle for NA West, South America, and EU Central. For whatever reason, EU West just doesn't prefer the Soulfist. I think in general, the martial artists are kind of across the board lower on average, but in some cases can be really high. Soulfist kind of shocks me because I think aesthetically, a very interesting class. Anyone who likes that kind of Z fighter, martial arts tournament, key energy kind of aesthetic, Soulfist nails it. I think what drives people away from Soulfist is not only the Spirit Bomb ult that can be very inconsistent and can be quite frustrating, but they also can be pretty hard to pick up and master because they have so many different mechanics that other classes just don't have to worry about. Not that they're bad. They have damage reduction, especially in PvP. That damage reduction buff for the class is like, it's almost pseudo support, which is really cool. They're good at peeling. They have a lot of tools in their toolkit, and even if you're playing Robust Spirit, which is specialization main, they can still be very fast because they have multiple dashes in their kit. And when that Spirit Bomb does land, boy, does it feel good. Artillerist is just under the midline for most regions. And this one, I think, is just very unique. It's a playstyle and an aesthetic you don't see too often in RPGs, especially RPGs that include fantasy elements. But having this big gun artillerist weapon master is really cool. It does play slower, but it is very bursty. I have an artillerist in tier 3. I really like the class, but it's actually, I mean, it's relatively consistent. It's plus or minus 1 place across all regions. So I think I would still mark this as a very popular class, very well played and very engaging for most people. And Gunlancer's kind of in the same boat. EU Central, EU West, exactly same position between the two. NA East and NA West actually likes Gunlancer more than any other region. And South America dislikes Gunlancer more than any other region, with it being 3rd to last there on the list. And Sharpshooter kind of in the same boat, towards the bottom in some regions. South America likes Sharpshooter more than most, and EU West as well. It looks like Sharpshooter just not very favored in NA East or NA West. I think also, again, a very powerful class. One of the most consistent, very, very straightforward, easy to play. And fun to master as well, especially if you're going with the Death Rush or Death Strike build, which can be kind of challenging to make work in some content. But for whatever reason, is a little bit lower in some of these regions. And at the very bottom is Scrapper. This one's bizarre. I thought people would be more interested in big, heavy gauntlets, smashing earth, like earthbender, big meaty hits. But for whatever reason, Scrapper is the lowest in EU West, NA East, NA West, South America, and is 2nd to last in EU Central. Now, it does play a lot slower. Generally, the slower classes are a lot harder to play because there's so much movement. There's so many mechanics. It can be challenging to play Scrapper, especially Shock Training Scrapper, which is even slower than Taijutsu. It can be challenging to play, but I guess the people that would like the gauntlet playstyle of Scrapper are maybe getting that itch scratched with Berserker, or maybe with Striker or Soulfist. It's possible that's driving around. I mean, it's not even that disparate. Like War Dancer kind of goes up in North America and then down in Europe and South America, but Scrapper's just kind of at the bottom as it stands right now. Now, it's one of the oldest classes. I think it was one of the original classes in Lost Ark, so maybe it just needs a polish update, like, new effects and sounds and things like that. But I like the class. I love it a lot. If you're a Scrapper main, leave a comment down below or let us know, because she's awesome. She's very reliable in one of the most consistent counters in the game. Not only is it fast, but it reaches far. She has a ton of weak point, a ton of stagger damage. So I think and she doesn't even have mana, so she can't even run out or have her mana drained either. So super reliable. But that's the list that we have right now for April. It looks like some of the classes got shifted around from last month. We do see a reduction in the bot percentages, mainly because I think last month we were seeing some very high, like a vast majority of them being Berserker and Sorceress. So those coming down, even just, a single digit or double digit is a big win, I think, to bring those bots down and kind of bring that. And maybe over the next couple months, we'll see those numbers start to normalize. But what do you think about the spread here? Is your main high in popularity, low in popularity? Are you someone who likes to play popular classes, or you're someone who likes to play the unpopular classes? Or maybe you're just someone who doesn't care. Popularity doesn't mean anything to you. You play what you like, and that's about it. But thanks for tuning in. I love doing these. It's cool to see how new regions pick up classes and which ones get played the most. Yeah, I look forward to doing more of these. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.